I want to show you my latest tool to connect Reaper to Wwise and back. It's called GrimSync, and we are looking at a small example project with a couple of folders and files, audio files within them. So if you're familiar with render blocks, then you know you could use the structure of tracks to name the items. So you'll first make the blocks from the selected files, then you click AutoName. And what we have here is enemy footsteps concrete. So this is the hierarchy of tracks that has been used to name the blocks. But we're not limited to just tracks. We can also use regions. So let's say I have a region here called SFX, and then inside it I have another region called Foley. And then you can see we have two regions, and then I can run AutoNaming again. And now we have file named SFX Foley enemy footsteps concrete. The idea is that you use the structure of a project to name the blocks. But since you already have this structure, why don't we use it for something else? I mean, if we are using middleware such as Wwise, we need to define the structure in Wwise for the files that will be imported. So why shouldn't we do it already here? So for example, let's define this region as work unit, and then this region as a folder. And then let's say, okay, enemy is actor mixer, footsteps are probably random container, or no, let's make it blend container, and then inside that blend container, let's make random container for concrete. And yeah, let's do stairs at the same time, why not? So stairs are not the part of region hierarchy, so we have different naming, but let's fix that quickly. So, and because I have overwriting of the file names in AutoName settings, I can click AutoName and then the names are fixed. So now we have these two structures that have defined names, and then we define this as a random container, and we can also define this as a random container. We can use GrimSync to import these assets into Wwise. So let's make a selection, and then let's run the tool. And here's how the tool looks. And over here, you can see the hierarchy that is going to be created. We can see that, first of all, the assets are going to be inside the default work unit. And then we have all the hierarchy that we defined. And we can see over here that we have a couple of audio files that are not yet created. So we can click render, and this is rendering the assets. So that is done. We can now see they're green, and the location of them is here. So maybe we can see it better like this, or you can use the tooltip as well. And now the remaining step is to click sync. So we press sync, and then we see the report. We go back to Wwise, and then in here we can see that the new structure has been created. So we have everything that we defined over here directly in Wwise, created from Reaper. So that's the basic principle. But we can do more things. So we can customize a couple of naming formulas. We can choose which is the order that the blocks are going to have as names. But let's stick with regions, tracks, metatags. What happens if you want to change the location of importing? Let's say we don't want the files to be imported here. We can undo here, and let's say that we want files to be created in a folder called final sounds. So what we can do is then make another region, and then click this button here. It says create new link region, and this will connect to Wwise and create a special region that has the link to the selected Wwise object. And if we click refresh, we can see this is the updated location. And if we click GrimSync, that does the rendering and syncing at the same time, we go to Wwise, and then we can see that the work unit has been created inside the folder that we defined as a root location for importing. And over here we can see all the files. And if we right click and go to open containing folder and see where the file is, we can see that it has been created in originals folder. But some people like to have their originals folders organized properly. So if you want to place them somewhere else, what can we do? Inside the project settings, we can define original subpath. So let's say for this Reaper project, we want to define originals folder called Foley. So we save, and then we click yes, and then we click yes to save the project. Now some things have happened, we're going to talk about it later. And then what is important right now is that we can see that now these files are going to be placed into a folder called originals, because we defined that's the location where we want to import them. So let's do GrimSync again. And if we go back to Wwise, we can see we still have the same structure that we defined, but our files are now located inside SFX Foley folder. So that's kind of cool. There's one more thing I want to mention, and that's what happens if we, for example, define some structure over here that's actually not possible to be created inside Wwise. For example, here we have a blend container, and inside we decide to make an actor mixer. So if we click refresh, now we can see that there are problems with our structural design. We can scroll down, and then let's hide the files. We can see that the folder, the name concrete actor mixer, is located within the blend container. That is not possible, so we need to fix it, and we will not be able to sync before fixing these issues. So this is kind of error prevention. So we go back here, move this to random container, click refresh, and now everything is fine again. What happens if we want to go back to our Reaper project and to edit some of these files? Let's say we don't actually like this file, it's too boring. We can go use ReaOpen. That's another tool that's free for use, and it's also supported by GrimSync. So we click here, and then the file is focused. The project is open if it is not opened, and then let's do some editing. So we can do unpack this, do some increase the volume here, and let's make this double. Yeah, why not? And because I added some new tracks, I should do this probably, and then fix the colors. Okay, this is the file we want to update. Let's do rendering and syncing again, and go back here, and then we see that we have this file updated. So that's kind of cool. We can iterate quickly. And you can see over here that the file is white. That means that we rendered it. If we click refresh, we can see that this file is green because we have rendered it, but there is an option called clean. Delete rendered files of selected blocks from Reaper export folder. Inside our render settings, we have this directory where the files are going to be exported. This is white because the file has been rendered, but we can click clean, and this will ask us if we want to delete this file from the folder of a Reaper project. Click yes, and then we see that the file is missing. So this can be useful when we want to re-render some files. We can do, let's say, selection of all of these, refresh, and then can clean all of them. So this will not delete the file from the originals folder in Wwise, just from Reaper folder, because they're copied to Wwise from there. So it asks us, do we want to delete them? We say yes, and now we can see that these files have been cleaned, and it says that they are missing. So we cannot sync without first rendering them. Once you're done with the containers and files, your job is not over, so you need to create events. And events can be complicated structures that are playing multiple sound sources from different sound containers, and they can change states and switches and RTPCs. It takes some time to design them, but not all events are like that. Actually, a big number of events are just sounds that you need to play, and sometimes it's just a simple random container that needs to be played when the footstep is triggered inside the game engine. So there's an option to actually create events from containers in GrimSync. So you just select the object that you want to create the event from, and you can see the list of events that are going to be displayed, and you can see that it's going to be inside the default work unit. And you can also pick to make a stop event also as well, because maybe this is some kind of loop and you want to have both play and stop event. Since we already have these files imported in Wwise and the structure created, we just want to make these events, and then let's right click here and click sync events. And this will create events from those objects. So we can see here that we have play and stop events. So this is kind of useful. But what if we don't want to make these events in default work unit? Let's say we have a custom work unit called Foley events, and then inside we have our enemy character, and we want these events to appear here instead of here. So we can go back to REAPER and create another special region with the object selected. Now that we have this special region for events, let's do some other events from the stairs, and we can see that it's going to be created inside Foley events enemy. And we can also do from separate audio files to create events as well. Because we don't have these, let's do GrimSync. It will render, sync, and create events. And if we open the folder here, we can see we have all the events that we defined for creation, and then we have here the audio files. So what happens if the location for importing that we defined, like this final sounds folder, needs to be relocated to some other place in Wwise? For example, we don't want it inside default work unit. We have a custom work unit called SFX sounds. Sure, why not? Inside there we have approved, and then we have final sounds, something everybody does. So we have this location that is invalid now, so it's not here anymore. So if you're not sure if this project is still up to date and these links are valid, you can click validate button to fix that. And now we can see that this location has been updated to this location. So it uses the GUID, the special ID that every object has. So if you moved it or renamed it, the GUID is still the same. And then we can go back to the hierarchy, and we can see that these sounds are now being created here. So just to be sure that this works, let's convert these so we can know when they're imported. And let's do this. And if we do GrimSync again, we can see that they are re-imported. If you don't like this, and I don't like this because you have just a limited space, you can do like 7 regions and then they overlap. That's why I created the actor mixers or other colors to be changed. So if you create another actor mixer over here, it should be another variant of blue, but if you don't like it, you can have a more distinct variation of colors between these regions. So that's one thing you can do with these. But another thing is that you can actually create link tracks. So for example, you can pick the same final sounds folder and select some folder here, click F track, that's folder track. And now you have the location linked to the track, and we can remove these links. Here it is important to know that you need to follow the formula. So we have regions, tracks, and metatags. So this is the order of creating the structure. So we have regions first, there's nothing for the regions, and then we have the link in tracks. So the last link in the path of creating the hierarchy will be used. It's still okay. My advice is to use either track links or region links, and not to combine them both, because it can be both frustrating to navigate and also to understand what is really happening. So my advice is actually to take some root folder, create a link there, maybe a link for maybe another one for events, and then use that for the rest of your project. You can make it complicated if you want, but it's up to you. So this is the basic workflow. You can define the structure within REAPER to define file names, to create folders and containers inside Wwise, and then also to create some kind of simple events that can be play events or stop events. But that's not all. There are also advanced features, and we're going to cover some of them right now because it is important to be aware of all of the possibilities of the tool, and then you can use what you need the most for your project. If you want to skip some of these tracks or regions, so you don't use them for naming or for, you just want to have some information here. Let's say this is going to be placeholders, but you don't want to be part of the name, and it's important for you to have this. You don't want to have placeholders here. You can ignore this track with this button, so, or just type // and then if you do this you will skip. So that's one thing you can do. If you want to have just the file name and no hierarchy, you will have it inside the file name but not inside the hierarchy, because it's not the part of it's not defined as a container. But sometimes you want to do the opposite. You want to have a container but you don't want to have it as a path. So let's say this is epic sounds, and you don't want this as a file name, but you want to have actor mixer that is called epic sounds. Again, if you try this, you will have this in the file name and you don't want it. So you can do path only. You select the track, you do path only, you have these brackets, and then when you AutoName, you will have just the file name that you want, but in here you will have this structure being created. Maybe you can try and test this if it works. Epic sounds, concrete, and the file names don't have epic sounds inside. All of this can be also done for regions, so you can ignore some region, ignore regions, you can do path only to regions, and you can, this is for renaming, you can remove the container prefix as well. You can also use this, this is cool with the toolbars for regions, because you can right click and then use them as a tool to change stuff quickly. And these are double functional toolbars, because if you make time selection, they will create a new region. But if you just click some region, you will just change it. So that's also very useful, and you want to delete some of them, you can do this. If you want further flexibility, you can use Metatags to define even more things. Let's say another folder. Maybe you want this to have a custom stuff, but it says we made a mistake, and let's see what's the mistake. We have actor mixer enemy inside our, so we changed these and these are not working anymore. So let's fix it. And now we can see we have these another and folder created. Now let's do GrimSync. Another folder that we defined within these meta tags. So you can define some structure here if you like, for whatever reason. If we go through the settings, the project settings over here, this is to connect to Wwise. Pretty much can leave it by default unless some programmer told you to change it. Here you can choose if you're doing sounds or music by default, and changing formula settings, we already covered this, and original path. But there is a button called Unlock Advanced Settings, and we're going to cover those. So it's important to understand that these settings are critically changing the behavior of your project and the generation of containers, originals, and events. So make sure that you're familiar with these advanced options if you want to use them. And let's say yes, because that's what we want to do. And this is the list of things that we just unlocked. First of all, we can change SFX to some other language, because this is by default. And then we can use English, US, if we want to do some voices. And I recommend create new for voices, but let's go back to SFX. And this is the important part, link blocks to Wwise objects. That's what I want to demonstrate. So let's enable this option and save the project. And let's go to some part that we didn't already use. So here we can pack, we can AutoName, then we can see enemy that bone. Okay, the files are here, refresh. Okay, they're going to be created here. That's fine. So let's do that. Let's call GrimSync. We have them over here. And now one thing is different back in Reaper. Now you can see that these files have these special backgrounds, and they indicate that these files are linked to some particular Wwise sound objects. And if we go back to our tool, you can see that they are now linked. They have a special meaning over here. If you want, you can unlink them. So these are now unlinked. Let's do both. So these two are not linked, but these three are linked. Yeah, let's do something with these three. Let's move them somewhere else. Let's create completely different location. Let's move these sounds over here. Rename them actually. First one, second one, third one. So now, because they are linked, this allows you greater flexibility than just changing the location of the root folder that we defined as a link here or as a region. Because now you can move the sounds as well and rename them and create new structures, and as long as you don't delete them, they will be linked to these objects. So we can click validate for them, and you can see that they are updated. Let's try syncing them. I did something wrong here. Okay. I picked the wrong one. Okay, so this one was 2, 3, and 4, and the first one was not picked. Okay, so we can see that these three are updated. So linking allows you to have more flexibility within Wwise project and still keep the files over here. So once you're done with your original idea for the hierarchy, you don't have to keep it inside Wwise. You can move these assets to a different place and still be able. And if you try to reopen them, they will be located with their original name. It's important just to not change the original wave file name. So validation is done on the selected objects. Unless so we have now one updated link, that's the one we made mistake. The number 1 is now called first one, and we can see where they are linked now. We can also clean with the files being linked, and then you can see that we have these that are not linked, one that is linked and rendered, and 3 that are linked but missing from REAPER folder. So we will have to export it again before being able to sync missing 3 files. What else is possible? We can do something called Wwise Metatags. That will allow us to do something like this. We name the files, and then we open Metatag editor, and we say hashtag low pass equals 30, pitch equals 100. Then when we try to do this, we can see the properties that have been added. We are going to define pitch and low pass, and let's do for these two, let's do something else. Additionally, is looping enabled equals true. For this one is going to be looped, and this one is going to be looped as well. And let's try this. Step attack. Okay, you can see the low pass filter, and pitch is 100 for all of these, and then we have loop enabled for these two. So you can have parameters to predefine from REAPER directly to Wwise for some of the sounds, not for containers right now, but for the sounds you can. And one very cool thing that you can do is actually, let's try this. We don't have to use render blocks. We can use also single items. Let's define some timeline. So these are some sounds. Let's say these are steps. Okay, and we have steps over here, and there's a custom action, add timeline delay to meta tags, and let's run it. And then over here now we can see that these have special initial delay values. Sorry. Let's put these into a blend container, GrimSync. So here are the steps with defined delay values. So if I play them, so we have this. So this was so difficult and boring to do in Wwise to recreate the order of files, and now you can do it quickly with this, and it also works with blocks, not just single items. Wwise Object reference. Here you can see the list of all the properties that you can define as Wwise meta tag inside blocks. So high pass volume, inclusion, global limit, the initial delay. So these are like all available to be makeup gain, and all these you should be able to define them. I did not test them all, but they should be working. There is also his voice. Cool. I don't know if this is read only. So maybe let's try this actually. So I didn't try this. Is voice equals true. Okay, this one is not working. I expected that. His voice can be modified, yeah. So that is just a read-only value, so that's fine. But if we want to do to import these as voices, we can change the language here to English US, and let's pick create new works better for this setting. if I try to sync these, they are now voices. So you can do also voices. So these are in English, but can define other languages as well, but one per project, per Reaper project. Let's go back to our project. Okay, let's go from here. What if we want to define some formula to put this into a originals folder dynamically? We can do project, go to original settings and go and click smart. When we click smart, you can do work unit and let's pick virtual folders and let's save the project. So what this will do is it will consider the structure that we want to define and pick all work units and folders to create the subfolders in original subfolder. Let's see. Originals, hit, layer 1 and layer 3. Hit is work unit, layer 1 is folder, layer 3 is also folder, so these will be created in this. So this allows you to to define some structure in Wwise and also to define at the same time structure in originals. And let's test this. Let's see if it works. We're still doing voices, but okay. And if we open the file, we can see that we have hit, layer 1, layer 3. So we created all these as a dynamic originals path. This can be very useful, and I advise you to use this with linking, because without linking it can be a mess. This way you will make sure that they are always going to that originals folder, so even if you move them over here, they're not going to be lost or duplicated. Okay, that's another feature that's possible, and you can do the same thing for events. So if we want to create events by using smart event subpath, so and we can do the same. So let's let's include actually actor mixer. We can see that this event is going to be created on this location, and enemy, which is a actor mixer, is also included compared to originals, which are not going to use that. So if we click GrimSync, we can see that the folder structure has been created dynamically, and it is smart. I mean, it reads this path and skips the files we want to skip. So a last layer is not here, but all these folders, actor mixers, and work units are here. We want to do some music. Let's go change this to SFX, back to SFX. And now we can get interactive music hierarchy. Save this. Yes. Yes. Okay. Music switch container. My playlist. My segment. Let's name these manually. Drum loops. And now we can see the structure over here. If we do GrimSync, it will render all these assets, and then it should create the music hierarchy structure. So if we switch to music layout, we can see this music segment. And I know we did this, but here we need to do this if you want to keep this like that, because it will treat them as separate music tracks. Yes, music tracks. But yes, you can do music as well, and you can do single sound sources or blocks. The last thing I want to demonstrate is actually regarding the NVK tools. There is basic support to do NVK folder items and to use GrimSync. We can do add existing. And then these are NVK folder items. So if you name them with the monkey symbol, NVK sounds like this, they will be picked up by the GrimSync. And they will be also rendered through render blocks procedure, but they are still NVK folder items. So we can do stuff like this. Holding breakbeat, NVK sounds. But they cannot be linked. Single items and NVK folder items cannot be linked. Only render blocks can be linked and be as a special kind of relationship between Wwise objects and Reaper render blocks. So this is the basic principle, and the advanced features we've seen both. There's still stuff to show here that I didn't cover, and probably some situations that could be improved in the way of how they're previewed or some bugs that are existing. But the tool is pretty much ready for use, and I can't wait for you to test it and to tell me what you think about it. So thank you very much again, and talk to you soon. Bye.